show a little bit of our field moisture repository web portal. And first, I wanted to start very quickly about who are we. So here in this call, we have our we are the Wildfire Interdisciplinary Research Center Fire Modeling Group. That's based on San Jose State University. And this group is led by Dr. Adam Kochanski, which is right now in the call. And myself, I'm a postdoctoral research associate, and we are a big group. But on this specific topic, the main people are Jack Drucker, which is a former student of us that now is working at NOAA, and Chase Porter, which is our scientific programmer. So those are the two main developers of the tool that we will show you today, our internal tool. And a little bit of a background. So the National Field Moisture Database is great because it's the most comprehensive public field sampling database. So it's a fundamental product for a lot of our projects. And we created a web portal. The web portal of the National Field Moisture Database started failing a long time ago, sometime last year. So basically, instead of showing something like this, which is before the fail, it was showing something like this, which was just a white map. So just for our projects, we wanted to have a way to, one, get the data easily, and two, have a way to display the actual data that's available, so we know like what we can do with the data, right? So we decided to implement a very simple approach just as an internal solution for us to try to alleviate those issues that we were facing, and that is where it was born, the field moisture repository and the web portal. So it's basically an SQLite database that scrapes data from the National Field Moisture Database. It puts everything in a very simple format that it's easy to work with, and it's all packaged with a Python library that it's very user-friendly, and you can just get the data that you need and query what you need. And then we just pair it with a Flask and JavaScript web interface that also tries to make it very simple to be used. So after that, we had some collaboration with some folks, and they were like, "Oh, this repository actually looks great." And right now, nothing is working on the National Field Moisture Database site in the sense of the web interface. So then they basically embedded our web portal into WFAS, so people in the community can display the data and download the data in some way. But yeah, so currently the FMR, it only has data from the National Field Moisture Database, which was turned down sometime last March. So it's not updating from the new FSD from you, but we are working to have it that link, and we started thanks to some meetings with Scott Lin and some of the developers. We were able to figure out a way of using the API. So soon we will have the data also added, and we are working on it. So we should soon have also the new data that it's been collected in your FSD. So now with that, I'll just give Jack, which is the person that was behind all the creation of this web portal, to give just a quick demo, just for you to know like what is the tool, and then we can just do some. If you have any questions, we can answer them. So I'll stop sharing, and Jack, you can give your demo.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I'm new to Microsoft Teams. I'm still learning the layout. It's just this. Oops. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Looks good.
Perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Jack Drucker. As Angel said, I'm a former student at San Jose State. I literally just graduated and I'm now working at NOAA. And I was the original developer for this tool that was initially just an internal tool, but we put it out on the web so that anyone can access it. And so to get started, like Angel said, this is just we wanted to have something similar to the original National Fuel Moisture Database, but in a way that we can just quickly display the data or download the data from whatever projects we needed. So the format looks very similar. As you can see here, when you load the page, it just shows a map of the United States with the states highlighted. And when you hover the state, it'll show you the name of the state. And you have some lists on the side that are non-functional on the landing page. But when you click on a state, say California, takes a second to load. There's a lot of data in California. It'll zoom into the said state that you've clicked on, and it'll display a bunch of markers. And all these markers are just the sites that collect fuel sampling data. And the color is indicative of the last sample that was taken at that site for whatever fuels they entered last. So this just gives you kind of an idea of what the fuel moisture is looking like across California for all of the fuel samples that have been taken. But as you can also see, there's the two lists on the side that were originally unpopulated or not populated. And the left side list just shows the types of fuel types that are available and all the markers that are displayed on the screen. You can scroll down and look at all the types of markers, fuel types. And the same thing on the right side for the sites. It's just all the sites that are available and are shown on the current screen. There's quite a few in California. And the lists are essentially just ways to filter this data because there's a lot of markers, and maybe you want to look at like a specific fuel type. Because currently being displayed, the markers, it's just all fuel types, whatever the last sample was. So say you want to look at like chamise for new growth. All the markers or all the sites that sample chamise new growth will be displayed, and their last sample will actually be updated here. So even if this marker, say Alder Point, its last sample was 1,000-hour fuels. When you click the filter for new growth, it will update to the last sample for chamise new growth. So you get an idea of what the chamise new growth was looking like the last sample at that site. So you get an idea of overall what chamise new growth looks like at the time. We also have a search bar, so there are quite a few fuels. So you can just type in like chamise, and all the chamise options will appear. If you need like sagebrush, all those options will appear. And then live fuel moisture and dead fuel moisture are pretty different. And so having a scale color bar that we have above, which just is indicative of the fuel moisture content of that sample from 0 to 150%. And anything above 150% is also just kind of clumped into that last color bar. But basically, this is kind of useful for live fuel moisture, but not so much for dead. So we do have these two check marks on the fuel type side, list side, where you can filter between a dead fuel moisture color bar and a live fuel moisture color bar. So you can get a better idea of what the moisture content is looking like for those types of fuels. And this also works if you want to just select the 1,000-hour or 100-hour, 10-hour. On the left-hand side, the color bar will update in accordance to your choices. And something you also might have noticed is that when you select a fuel type, the list on the right also becomes stagnant or it's no longer blue. And this is just so that our lists are dynamic. And so if you select 1,000-hour and if we had the option to select a site, it would update the fuel type site and it would just be kind of jarring. So when you select a fuel type, it displays the markers that have that fuel type sampled, and then the sites that sampled that specifically are listed on the right. And you can hover over them and see that they're the same. So, we have the markers now. One of the biggest things is actually looking at the data. So there's a couple different ways that you can actually look at the data. One is by just selecting one of the sites, and a little pop-up will appear. And you can select the years you want to look at and the fuel types you want to look at. And once you've selected that, we have a couple of options. You can plot the data, and we have 3 different plot types. And then we have a download data button, so you can actually download the data. So just really quickly, when you select the plot types of the plot data and you have the fuel moisture climatology selected, it will show you whatever given fuel you've selected. It'll show you the values for that, the last values sampled at that site for the given year. So this site only collected data in 2023, not 2024. So the last year that we're going to display is 2023. And then so that's that blue line. Then we also want to show what the fuel moisture looks like for that fuel type on a historical average, and then what the low values for that site look like. So that's what these 3 lines indicate. It's just the current year's values, the historical average values, and then the historical low values, which is pretty similar to how the National Fuel Moisture Database originally showed stuff. And as I said, we were just kind of making an internal tool to kind of mimic that and get an idea of what the field moisture was looking like at the time. And then we have a couple other plot types that are not very useful for a single plot, and I'll show you why in a second. But if you don't want if you want to look at multiple different markers at one time, we have these tools on the left-hand side, just like polygon tools, and you can just click and drag, and then the same window we saw for the single selection marker will appear, but now it has all of the marker data or site data in it. So now you can select multiple types of fuels for all these markers, and all the data is aggregated. And so now when we go and plot the data, this data will show, all of the chemise for the last year that you've selected, which is for us 2024, and there's a lot of data, so it actually shows data. But we can also change the year, the end year, and it'll actually update these plots so that it's the last year selected is actually what this blue line is, and we can see how it compares versus the historical average and the historical low. And this is aggregation of all of these markers data that collect chemise. And then on the plot pop out, you can actually select the fuel type plot that you want to look at, which is really nice, that you've selected before, or you can zoom through them with the arrows, or you can select which one you want. And then some of the other plot features that we have is actually looking at the number of observations. And so this is looking at all of these field types, how many observations of those field types in the region you've selected actually have. So we can actually deselect and just look at chemise from 2000 to 2023. We can plot that data. Ooh, whoops, it has goofed a little bit, but here we go. So now here you can see all of the number of observations for chemise from 2000 to 2023, which is our selected year time, which is very useful to see. And then we can also look at the fuel types, and that's more so if we have select all the fuel types, we plot the data, you can see how many observations of a given fuel type over your time range you've actually available in the area that you've selected. So it just gives you kind of an idea of what fuel types are in the area and how many samples there are. And then last but not least, the last kind of nifty feature is the download data feature. And basically when you hit it, it takes all the data that you've selected for the time range, and it puts it into a nice little file, which is right here. And it just organizes the data based on the station ID that we've assigned to it, the fuel type, the variation, and when it was sampled. And then once you're
Jack,
done with, yeah.
So, sorry, Jack, sorry to interrupt you, but there was a question in the chat, which is that if there is any way to filter the years of the pointers on the map. So can you show that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other features we have, sorry, my screen is a little small. You can select the date range for the markers that are displayed. And so if you, sorry, I have the Teams thing. So now our range is 2000 to 2024. We can reduce that range, and as we reduce the range, you'll see the markers start disappearing, showing that those are the markers that were sampled after the date range that we've selected. And so you can get an idea of what sites are actually still sampling data, and which ones are just starting to sample data, which is nice. And all the lists on the side will update in accordance to the markers that are displayed when you filter this time range. And all the items in this pop-up window will also update in accordance to all the changes that you make. But other than that, you can also, the last kind of feature is resetting the map. So you're done with California, you want to look at another state, you just reset the map, you go to another state, it'll load, and then you can look at all the data in this area. But that's kind of it. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jack, for the presentation. I think one of our biggest questions is the integration of Field Sample Database in your repository web portal. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, so you're talking about the new FEMS API?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. Yeah, so it's the FEMS Field Sample Database. It's a module off of FEMS. Yep.
Yeah, so I just gained access to the API, and so I started looking at how we would, be able to integrate that into this portal, because we still have our internal projects that we want to, have our custom data format for. So our goal is to analyze the API and create sort of something similar to this on the back end, sort of like Angel was initially saying, where we have an SQLite database that used to scrape the National Field Moisture Database. Ideally, we would have something similar with the API where we would just scrape it and collect that data into our SQLite database and then just display the options here. But like I said, I just got a hold of the API, so I'm still learning all the function calls and what variables that we have available to us.
Okay, so at this point, we're not going to have any 24 data since the National Field Moisture Database was down earlier this year.
Yeah, so the last time we scraped the field moisture data was before it went down. I think it was like early March. So all the data that you saw was actually, the latest data was from January to early March. And that's not a great time for sampling because of moisture and whatnot. So there wasn't a whole lot of data early on. But yeah, once we get the API integrated with our web portal, we would absolutely start displaying the data as soon as possible.
Okay. Other questions for Jack from San Jose State University on their web portal?
Hey, Rachel, I got one. If we're throwing
Absolutely.
suggestions out there, thank you for the presentation. First off, it's a great tool once we get our updated data in there. Is it possible for when you go into the graphs to select specific years? Would it be possible to add that in future evolutions? So if I wanted to show the same graph, but I wanted to specify and show like 2012 data or 2006 data, I could specify just those years to put on the graph as well.
Yeah, no, we can absolutely look into that. Originally, this was just an internal tool, and we didn't need it for that functionality, but we can absolutely add that so that, now that our web portal is live, then people want, add suggestions, we can absolutely do that. So you can add a specific year to compare to on here.
Yep, and then plot that line on the graph. That'd be super handy.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Thank you.
That's something that the future developers will work on, because I've now moved on. So that will be something that our scientific programmer Chase will be working on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dylan, I have one question for you. So you are thinking about, let's say, because right now you could select like the start and end year as the same year and just display this particular year. But I guess you are thinking more about something that you, let's say, select just two of those years to compare one to the other. Not necessarily continuous years, let's say 16 and 17, but let's say 16 and 22nd.
Yeah, we'd want the ability, like you have, to select the date range, obviously, but in part of that, we'd want to show those specific years that were selected on the graph. Yep, just so we can compare values, because that's what we think back to. We think back to busy fire seasons, 2006, 2012, and that's what our firefighters want to look at when they see those values. So that would help us enable to tie those into some of the products that we currently use.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have some hands raised. Kevin Osborne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, good morning. Kevin Osborne. I work in predictive services in Northern California out of Redding. I guess this question is a little bit for Rachel as well as for the San Jose State team, but FEMS eventually will have visualizations and graphs and charts. Do we see this as a long-term tool that we want to start like giving suggestions for, like Dylan just gave, or is this something that's more of like, once FEMS has all this functionality, we're not going to need to spend a lot of effort and time continuing to develop this particular tool? Because if FEMS gets the full functionality that it's potential to have, I see Scott popping on. Is there a reason to parallel these two to that extreme level.
So Kevin, I can chime in. I mean, on our side, I mean, we'll keep this repository alive because it's kind of designed for what we need. We want to have a full database, continuous database, formatted in exactly the same way from the very beginning, up to now. We run a lot of climatological analysis of light fuel moisture, so we need that anyway, and we need to have a way how to quickly see the number of observations, have a look at the statistics at any given time, just to get an idea also about fire danger, especially when we send our teams to assist with incidents. So for us, I mean, it's not gonna go away. We'll keep it, and we definitely appreciate any feedback regarding what functionality would be welcome, and what we should kind of add and improve. And I guess FEMS and this GIS-based portal, I think is great thing, and we are also looking forward to see that. From our experience, those kind of heavy GIS services are not always easy to work with, especially if you have a low bandwidth. So that's also the reason why we have our GIS tools kind of tailored to our needs, which essentially are, okay, we are in the field, or we are going to the field. We don't have a perfect internet connection. We still need to have access to the data, and then for us it essentially just works better. So if we need to have a tool like that, I mean, we'll do it, and we will keep it alive.
Yeah, Kevin, and from FEMS side, we do plan to develop a lot of the functionalities that you're seeing and others as well. That we are just providing this as, they have a nice site. We wanted to just give another tool in the toolbox. Many people are connecting into this that, are beyond just the federal government that we know of. So we just kind of wanted to be able to provide this tool in order really as a time being until we get the full capabilities of where we're moving towards. If you do have questions that sound, or enhancements that you could do, it does sound like they're willing to listen to those. But if you have other enhancements that you'd like to see above and beyond that, when we get into FEMS, yeah, we can obviously just let us know. Did I get what you needed, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I think that answers the question.
Yeah.
Seems like ultimately they're going to be really parallel efforts. So
yeah, but San Jose has had theirs going for years, a long time, beyond what we had, and beyond what was in the field moisture database, and they developed this, product for their specific capabilities. And honestly, we just thought it was a good product, but again, having it all in one, having that available through the field moisture database, and some of these visualizations as we move forward, yeah, there's going to be obviously some duplication of effort, or some duplication happening, just different styles of visualization.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm curious if you guys, I know you're learning the API, Jack, I'm curious kind of if you guys have like a timeline of when or a goal of when to integrate the field sample database info for 24. Yeah.
Absolutely. I literally just got a hold of the API maybe a day and a half ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm still looking through it. I think I have the stuff I need to integrate. So I'm hoping within the next couple weeks we'll be able to have it integrated.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Gina McGuire, I see your hands raised.
Actually, my question, Rachel, was exactly what you just asked. I was really curious on that, because I know you guys said as soon as, when you have the data, they'd be displayed as soon as possible, but just wondering, yeah, if we had a timeline, and if the graphical data from 2024 would be available this fire season, and then once it's integrated, will it update automatically as new fuel samples are input, or is it run on a cycle that it has to grab that data at specific times? Or I guess once, I guess, yeah, so 2 questions. When will we actually have graphs? Will it be this fire season for the 2024 data? And then how does that work after it's integrated to continue to bring in added data?
Yeah, absolutely. This is sort of like this originally started as like a passion project to just visualize the data. So I'm very connected to this, and I want to see it updated as soon as possible because I like it being used. I like it being helpful to the community. So the way we currently have it, or had it when we were scraping the original database, was we would update it every week because samples are pretty. There's no standard to the timeline that sampling is done, because it could rain in a region, so you don't get samples that week, and then maybe the following region it doesn't rain. So we scrape once a week. It's not every day. We could update it to every day if that's super useful for you guys. But yeah, so we'll have the update for the graphical stuff very, very soon, and then we currently have it being scraped automatically once a week. But like I said, if you think it should be scraped more often, we can absolutely do that.
I think that sounds good. I mean, I know their sampling schedule is every 2 weeks, but that, everybody's different. Somebody could be sampling every day depending on the weather and their schedule. But that timeline seems fine. So by very soon, you do mean this fire season, correct?
But yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Other questions for San Jose State University and their FMR product? So I know on the FEMS team, I know Scott spoke up for that. I'm detailed in on the FEMS team as well, and it's just great to have this resource, and I appreciate the work you guys are doing. And I know, Jack, you said it was a passion project. It's good. It's a good passion project. It looks like Kevin Thompson, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I was just curious. So in the old program, I was able to use Excel and get data from the web base off of the old national database, and be able to then kind of make my own groups and stuff. And I see you guys have the download. Is that still going to be is that possible through your guys' system to be able to do that, or is that going to be a little trickier?
Kevin, are you talking about the new database for the interagency group? So the replacement to the National Field Moisture Database, or the product that San Jose State University just went through?
I would say both, because I'm just wondering, because they have the downloaded data, right? So there's somewhere that they're storing it and getting it, and then if we can just, like with Excel, usually you can put in a little bit of a formula, if you know the IDs, station IDs, all that kind of stuff, to be able to then grab that data. And then what I usually like to do with it is take the raw stations that we have and come up with kind of a zone or an area average through Excel. And you can do that all by just hitting refresh data or set it up so it doesn't. I just, with the old one, we were able to do that. FEMS, I haven't figured out how to do that. I'm just trying to figure out if this is a way I can get into their program and do that. And I'm seeing some head shaking, so I'm liking it.
Yeah, and we have endpoints, and we can absolutely share them. We also have the back end of our repository as a GitHub repository if you download it on your local machine, and we're trying to make a library for it so it's just easy to install. And with that version, you can customize your query however you want. Station ID, state, time frame, and you can pull exactly the data you want by however you want to frame the data.
But Jack, I think even right now, I mean, when you select area or the type of the fuel, you can download like a CSV file and get it into Excel right away, and then just do the grouping or filtering or whatever you want to do. So if you are thinking about just downloading it like a text file, or that you could inject into Excel and then manipulate, I mean, it should be working. And I think you shouldn't have any problem in terms of filtering the data, even at the level of the interface already. But you are right. Once you select multiple sites, for example, then you would need to somehow probably order them. I mean, they will be ordered actually by the station, if I remember correctly, Jack. Am I right? So it's gonna be like, you know, the data, let's say for station A, you know, all the data, and then, you know, station B and station C, etc., etc. But if you then, you know, want, you know, to plot it or analyze it somehow, you know, yeah, you would need to analyze the station IDs, and based on that information, you know, do some magic and use some, you know, formulas to do whatever you want to do. But you should be able, you know, to get the data into Excel just, you know, from the current portal.
Great, thanks.
Rachel, if you want, I can take this question as well, but let's finish up San Jose and free them up if they need to, and then we can go over future capabilities to answer that, because I'm sure everyone will be interested in what's coming out here. So.
Okay, any more questions for San Jose State? Good. Thank you. I really appreciate you all being on the call and being open to feedback. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, please, I mean, if you have, you know, any ideas, or, you know, if you encounter, you know, any issues, just please, you know, let us know. If you have some ideas of, you know, a new functionality, just, you know, let us know, and we will do our, you know, best whenever we have a moment, just, you know, to implement that and just, you know, to make it better.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys with the flexibility and working with us and all the information. It's been really good working with you, and continue to look forward to it in the future. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.